She cut my internet cable, thinking it was just HOA business. 30 minutes later, federal agents were at her door. The neighborhood looked like something out of a brochure. Perfectly trimmed lawns, identical mailboxes, and streets so quiet, you could hear a dog bark from 3 houses away. It was the kind of place where nothing unexpected ever happened, where routines ruled the day and everyone knew just enough about each other to keep things polite. When I first moved in, it felt like a fresh start. No noise, no chaos, just calm. People waved when they saw you, neighbors exchanged small talk about the weather, and everything seemed controlled. But that calm didn't come naturally. It was enforced. And everyone knew who enforced it: Karen. You didn't even need to ask who she was. Within a week of living there, her name came up in conversations like a warning passed quietly between residents. She was the HOA president, but that title didn't fully capture what she had become. She wasn't just managing the neighborhood, she was policing it, watching it, controlling it. At first, it seemed almost harmless. A notice about trash cans being left out too long. A reminder about acceptable paint shades. Rules that felt strict, sure, but not unbearable. That illusion didn't last long. Soon, the letters started getting more specific, more personal. One neighbor got a warning because their garden looked uneven. Another was fined for having a doormat that didn't match the community aesthetic. Someone down the street had their car photographed and reported because it hadn't been moved in 2 days. It didn't matter if you followed the rules, Karen would find something new to enforce. People stopped arguing, not because they agreed, but because fighting back only made things worse. She kept records, took pictures, sent emails at odd hours, like she never really stopped watching, and the strangest part, she was always around. You'd see her walking slowly down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, pretending to admire the neighborhood while her eyes scanned everything: windows, driveways, roofs. Nothing escaped her attention. It wasn't just about rules anymore. It felt personal, like she needed control to feel in charge. I tried to stay under the radar, kept things neat, followed every guideline I could find. I figured if I didn't give her a reason, she'd leave me alone. But that's not how it works with someone like Karen, because in a neighborhood where everything is already perfect, people like her don't look for problems. They create them. It happened at the worst possible moment. I was in the middle of an important online meeting, the kind where every second mattered, and one mistake could cost more than just embarrassment. Everything was running smoothly. Clear audio, stable connection, no interruptions. Then, without warning, the screen froze. Voices cut out mid-sentence. My cursor stopped responding. Just like that. Silence. At first, I assumed it was a temporary outage. Maybe the provider was having issues. It happens. I waited a few seconds, then a minute, refreshing everything, checking the router. Nothing. No signal. Completely dead. That's when a strange feeling crept in. Something wasn't right. I stepped outside, hoping to see if any neighbors were dealing with the same issue, but instead, I saw her. Karen. She was standing near the utility box by the sidewalk, closer to my house than usual. That alone was odd. She didn't just wander, aimlessly. Every move she made had a purpose. In her hand was something metallic, catching the sunlight just enough to make it obvious. Wire cutters. For a second, my brain refused to connect the dots. It didn't make sense. No one would actually do something like that. Not over HOA complaints, not over personal grudges, but then she turned, looked directly at me, and gave a small, satisfied smile. Not a friendly smile, not even a fake one. The kind of smile that tells you she knows exactly what she just did. I walked toward her, trying to stay calm, but my frustration was already boiling over. Before I could even say anything, she spoke first, completely unbothered. Maybe now you'll pay more attention to community standards, she said, as if she were commenting on the weather. I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. You cut my internet line? She shrugged lightly, like it was no big deal. It was improperly installed, against HOA guidelines. There was no warning, no notice, no attempt to resolve anything. She had just decided, on her own, that she had the authority to interfere with something she didn't even understand. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. This wasn't a violation notice or another passive-aggressive email. This was direct interference, deliberate damage, and yet she stood there like she'd just done her job. What she didn't realize, though, was that this wasn't just about me losing internet access. Because that cable she casually cut, it wasn't just mine. And she had just made a mistake far bigger than she could even imagine. Most people, standing there in that moment, would have pulled out their phone and dialed their internet provider, filed a complaint, waited on hold, scheduled a technician for sometime next week. That's the normal response. That's what Karen expected. I didn't do that. I stood there for a few seconds, watching her walk away like nothing had happened, like she had just proven a point and moved on. The frustration was still there, but it wasn't the kind that makes you act recklessly. It was controlled, focused. I went back inside, picked up my phone, and made a different call. It rang once, then twice. On the third ring, someone answered. But the tone wasn't casual, and it definitely wasn't customer service. I spoke calmly, giving only the information that mattered. Location, situation, confirmation. There was a brief pause on the other end, the kind that tells you something just shifted. Sir, can you repeat that? The voice asked, more alert now. I did. Another pause, longer this time. Stay where you are. Do not touch anything. We're dispatching a team now. The line went quiet. I put the phone down and walked back outside, leaning against the porch railing like I was just waiting for a package delivery. Across the street, curtains started moving. People had seen the confrontation. Word travels fast in neighborhoods like this, especially when Karen is involved. About 10 minutes later, the first vehicle appeared. A black SUV, no markings, no company logo. Just tinted windows and a slow, deliberate stop near the curb. Then another one, and another. They didn't rush, didn't make noise, but their presence was impossible to ignore. Doors opened, and a few individuals stepped out, dressed plainly, but moving with clear purpose. They weren't confused. They weren't looking around trying to figure things out. They already knew why they were there. Neighbors started stepping outside, pretending to check mail or water plants, but everyone was watching. Phones were out now. Quiet whispers filled the air. Karen reappeared, probably drawn by the same curiosity as everyone else. At first, she looked confident, like this was just another situation she could talk her way through, another chance to assert control. But then one of the agents walked straight toward her. No hesitation. No greeting. Ma'am, he said, his voice steady. Did you tamper with the line near that property? For the first time since I'd known her, Karen didn't speak immediately. Her confidence flickered, just for a second. And that's when everything started to change. At first, Karen tried to recover like she always did, straightening her posture, lifting her chin, and putting on that practiced expression of authority she used whenever someone questioned her. You could almost see her searching for the right words, the usual script she relied on to intimidate neighbors into backing down. But this wasn't a neighbor standing in front of her. This wasn't someone worried about fines or warning letters. This was different. I was enforcing community regulations, she said, her voice still carrying that familiar edge of confidence, though it wasn't as steady as before. That line was improperly placed. It violated HOA guidelines. The agent didn't react. No nod, no acknowledgement, nothing. Just a brief glance toward the utility box, then back at her. That line, he said calmly, is not under HOA jurisdiction. There was a shift in the air right then, subtle but unmistakable, the kind of moment where control changes hands, and everyone present can feel it without a word being said. Karen frowned, clearly not used to being corrected. Everything in this neighborhood falls under HOA authority, she snapped, trying to regain ground. I have every right to. No, you don't. The interruption was quiet, but final. Not louder, not aggressive, just absolute. Another agent stepped closer to the box, crouching slightly to inspect the cut cable. He didn't need long. One look was enough. He exchanged a glance with the first agent, and whatever passed between them didn't need explanation. This connection is part of a secured relay, the first agent continued, now looking directly at Karen. It's been temporarily routed through this area. Karen blinked, confusion breaking through her composure. I don't care what it's for, she replied, though there was hesitation creeping into her voice now. If it's in my neighborhood, I regulate it. That's when the agent's expression changed, just slightly, but enough to make the situation feel heavier. You interfered with a federal system. The words landed hard. For a moment, Karen just stared at him, as if trying to process what he'd said, like it didn't quite register. This wasn't part of her world. There were no HOA bylaws for this, no clauses she could quote, no fines she could threaten. Around us, the quiet neighborhood had gone completely still. No whispers. Now, no move. You interfered with a federal system. The words landed hard. For a moment, Karen just stared at him, as if trying to process what he'd said, like it didn't quite register. This wasn't part of her world. There were no HOA bylaws for this, no clauses she could quote, no fines she could threaten. Around us, the quiet neighborhood had gone completely still. No whispers now, no movement, just silence. Karen glanced around, maybe expecting someone to step in, to support her, to validate what she'd done. No one did, because for the first time, it was clear to everyone watching. She wasn't in control anymore. Exactly 30 minutes after she had stood there with those wire cutters, completely Uverna that she was enforcing her version of order, everything came full circle. The neighborhood, which usually settled into a predictable calm by late afternoon, felt different, tense, watchful, like everyone was waiting for something they couldn't quite name. Then it happened. A vehicle pulled up in front of her house. Not loud, not dramatic, just deliberate, then another behind it. Doors opened with quiet precision, and a small group of officials stepped out, moving with the same calm authority as the agents from earlier. No raised voices, no flashing lights, just a presence that immediately changed the atmosphere. Karen opened her front door before they even knocked, as if she had been watching from inside, trying to convince herself that everything was still under control. For a split second, she looked like her usual self again, composed, ready to argue, ready to assert her position. That illusion didn't last. They spoke to her in low, measured tones, but the seriousness in their posture said everything. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't a discussion about community guidelines or minor violations. This was something far beyond the reach of HOA authority. From across the street, I watched as her expression slowly shifted. The confidence faded first, replaced by confusion. Then came the realization, the kind that doesn't hit all at once, but settles in piece by piece, each second making it harder to ignore. Her replies grew shorter, slower. Whatever arguments she had prepared clearly didn't apply anymore. Neighbors had gathered by then, keeping their distance but watching closely. No one spoke. No one intervened. For years, they had seen her control every situation, dominate every conversation, and bend every rule to her will. Now, for the first time, she was the one being questioned, the one being held accountable. Eventually, she stepped aside, and the officials entered her house briefly before escorting her back out. There were no dramatic scenes, no resistance, just a quiet compliance that felt almost unreal considering who she had been just hours earlier. As she was guided toward the vehicle, she glanced around the neighborhood. Not with authority this time, not with judgment, but with something closer to disbelief. like she couldn't fully accept how quickly everything had changed. The door closed, the vehicles pulled away, and just like that, it was over. That evening, something felt lighter. No emails, no notices, no footsteps outside measuring, watching, judging. For the first time since I'd moved in, the neighborhood wasn't being controlled. It was just peaceful.